Welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here because today we're unpacking a massive, truly critical topic. We're going to demystify the foundational concepts of cybersecurity and then journey all the way out to the frontier of the chaotic, modern threats we're facing right now. Whether you're building systems from the ground up or just trying to navigate your digital life without getting hacked, understanding this stuff is absolutely paramount. We're breaking it all down step by step.
Okay, let's dive right in. $1.77 billion. Let that sink in for a second. What does that staggering figure actually represent? Well, according to the FBI's Internet Crime Report, that is the total financial loss from business email compromise scams in just one single year, back in 2019. And that is literally just one specific type of attack. We're putting this right at the front to immediately establish the incredibly high stakes here. The digital world is extremely lucrative for adversaries, and the cost of failing to secure it, it's astronomical.
So here's our roadmap to keep things organized. First up, what is cybersecurity? Second, the CIA triad. Third, core security concepts. And finally, modern enterprise challenges.
Section 1. What is cybersecurity? Let's lay the groundwork.
Now, the textbook definition tells us that cybersecurity is the protection of information systems. That means the hardware, the software, the infrastructure, plus all the data on them and the services they provide. We're protecting all of that from unauthorized access, harm, or misuse. But here's the crucial distinction, and people miss this all the time. We usually think of threats as purely external, like malicious hackers and dark rooms. But cybersecurity is also about protecting against accidental internal errors. Harm happens by accident all the time. Sometimes it's just Bob in accounting forgetting to follow a standard security procedure. We literally have to guard against adversaries, physical processes, and human error all at once. And it's a giant puzzle. Just looking at the cybersecurity body of knowledge, or CyBOK, you can see the sheer complexity of this field. It breaks foundational knowledge down into 21 top-level areas across 5 broad categories. Look at how diverse this is. You don't just have your standard system security and infrastructure security. You've also got human factors, law and regulation, and risk management. So cybersecurity isn't just a tech problem. It's totally a human, organizational, and behavioral challenge too.
Moving right along to Section 2, the CIA triad. This is what guides our security policies. The CIA triad stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Every good information security policy out there is built around preserving these 3 specific pillars. It's basically our gold standard shield. If any one of these points on the triangle fails, the security of the entire system is compromised.
Let's translate these dry concepts into everyday scenarios to see the triad in action. Confidentiality, that just means preventing unauthorized access to sensitive info. Think of using your password or two-factor authentication for online banking. Integrity is all about guarding against improper modification or destruction of data, making sure it hasn't been tampered with in transit. We use things like checksums to mathematically verify data and digital signatures to prove it's authentic. And finally, availability. An amazingly secure system is completely useless if authorized users can't actually access it. So we rely on redundancies, disaster recovery plans, and backups to keep things running even during a power outage or a natural disaster. All right, Section 3, core security concepts. How do we actually enforce all this protection?
First, we have to clearly distinguish between authentication and authorization. They sound almost identical, right? But they are very different. Authentication is about verifying identity, proving you are who you claim to be. Authorization, on the flip side, focuses on determining your permissions. So when you log into online banking, the system authenticates your credentials. But then authorization determines exactly which specific accounts you're actually allowed to view and whether you have permission to make a transfer. Basically, think identity versus permissions. Now, when it comes to that first step, proving your identity, the answer you give the system usually falls into one of 3 factors. Factor 1 is something you know, like a password or your mother's maiden name. Factor 2 is something you have, like an RFID badge or a one-time passcode sent to your phone. And Factor 3 is something you are, like a fingerprint or a retinal scan. True multi-factor authentication, which we absolutely all should be using, requires combining at least 2 of these different factors to grant access. A very tangible, real-world example of something you have is a hardware token, usually called a key fob. This gives you on-device one-factor authentication. You'd use something like this to get into a highly restricted corporate network, or maybe a secure server room. And because the code on it changes constantly, even if a hacker steals your password, the something you know, they still can't get in without physically possessing this exact little device.
The third core concept, right up there with authentication and authorization, is non-repudiation. Now, that's a mouthful, but it basically guarantees that neither party can deny sending or receiving a message. Think of buying a car. You sign the contract, and a notary public stamps it after checking your ID. You can't come back a week later and claim someone forged your signature just because the car turned out to be a lemon. In the digital world, we get this notary stamp through asymmetric or public key cryptography. Because you sign the data with a secret private key that literally only you possess, you simply cannot deny that you made the transaction.
Which brings us to Section 4, Modern Enterprise Challenges. We're stepping out of the calm rules of defense and into some escalating modern threats.
We absolutely have to talk about generative AI. Since Gen AI platforms really exploded in 2023, they've completely revolutionized the threat landscape. Attackers are using AI to scrape personal details from social media to run incredibly convincing spear phishing and business email compromise attacks. They disguise themselves as trustworthy friends or employers, using the hometown and job data they just scraped. And then there are deepfakes, using AI to create highly convincing audio and video hoaxes. The sources actually highlight a really chilling example from 2022, where a deepfake video was released showing Ukrainian President Zelensky asking his troops to surrender. The biggest danger here is just how fast, false, highly manipulative information can spread when it looks completely authentic.
Just take a close look at these fake text messages. One is pretending to be a bank offering a credit limit increase. The other is warning about expiring bonus points. They both have malicious links. This is spear phishing, and the whole goal is to trick you into handing over financial info or login credentials. And it is terrifyingly effective. In fact, this kind of psychological manipulation accounts for up to 91% of internet attacks today. 91%.
And look, if you think only small targets fall for this, no way. No one is immune. Between 2013 and 2015, tech giants Facebook and Google were scammed out of more than $100 million through phishing scams with fake invoices. 100 million. Then there's ransomware. That's malware that locks and encrypts a victim's data until they pay a ransom. In 2023, a staggering 66% of organizations were hit by a ransomware attack. And in 76% of those attacks, the hackers successfully encrypted the data. This is exactly why our CIA triad's focus on availability and having solid backups is so incredibly vital.
But here is a scary thought. Even if your internal shield is practically impenetrable, third-party vendors can totally be your downfall. Software and hardware supply chain attacks are devastating. Take the defect in the Java-based Apache Log4j library. That vulnerability let malicious actors launch remote code execution attacks. And because this one single piece of code was embedded in countless applications all over the world, almost everyone was at risk, even if their own internal code was perfectly secure. If one link in the software supply chain is weak, the whole chain breaks.
So we clearly need people to fight these escalating threats. But right now, we're facing a massive skills gap. The global security industry needs an additional 4 million professionals to properly protect and defend organizations today. 4 million! And making this crazy shortage even worse is the reality of slashed IT budgets because of inflation and economic uncertainty. Organizations are basically being forced to defend against advanced AI, ransomware, and supply chain attacks while trying to do more with significantly fewer resources.
So we've unpacked what cybersecurity is, the vital layers of the CIA triad, the core mechanics of authentication, and the chaotic, very real modern challenges facing enterprises. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. Think about your own digital footprint, or the company you work for. Is your data truly an impenetrable fortress relying on strong fundamentals? Or is it a house of cards, just waiting for the exact right AI-generated phishing text to bring it all tumbling down? Stay vigilant, keep your systems updated, and never stop learning how to defend your corner of the digital world. Thanks for joining me on this Explainer.